Nahje, and thank you so much for coming back to watch another episode of The Weekly Read. This is season 2, and I'm so excited because season 1 went so well, and this season is going to be even better. So we have some really cool changes that we're making. They're not necessarily implemented yet, but they will be soon. And I'm going to stop talking now and let my guest introduce herself and explain why you came to the show.
Hi everyone, I'm Nahje. I came to the show because, well, I spoke with you before when we went to school together. You left and graduated. But it's always good to have a conducive conversation about the intersections of race, gender, and sexuality.
And I noticed your bow. I think it's a great touch. So essentially this month, as you know, is Black History Month. And so I really wanted to have a show a month, I can't talk, that was really just all about Blackness and different things about Blackness. So I had you on because I knew you could talk about being part of the LGBTQ community. And I wanted to learn more because you always manage to teach me something. And I also wanted to educate my viewers. So how do you identify?
I identify as pansexual.
Okay, and can you just explain what that means for anybody who might not understand?
Yeah, so pansexual, basically, like in the general scheme, it is one of the identities that is a middle sexuality, and it is in under the bisexual umbrella. So bi is for people that are attracted to two genders or two or more, depending how you want to get into it. Pansexual just means that I'm attracted to all genders.
Okay.
We like to say hearts, not parts. So for me, it's like I'm interested in the person versus the person's gender. For me, I only need to know someone's gender so that way I know how to address them, how to identify them, and just respecting their identity. But I'm not looking for like, oh, that's a guy, I can date him, oh, that's a woman, or oh, that's a genderqueer person. I mean, I think women are greater than men, but like, whatever.
Right. And how did you come to that conclusion about your identity and who you were?
Yeah. I don't know. So it was different for me because I grew up with a mother that's in the community. She identifies as a lesbian. So
really?
for me, maybe.
Yeah,
But like, my mom is a lesbian. So when I grew up, like, I saw her with another woman. So for me, it was like, okay, people date whoever they want, because I knew that like I had aunts that had husbands.
Right.
So I was 3, so really I didn't think anything of it at all. But as I got older, I was like, okay, that's cool. It wasn't until like middle school, like 6th, 7th grade, that I started to realize people did not like LGBTQ. Like that was like the sinful thing, especially in church. And like I have a religious family, so like I started to hear conversations about how it was bad. But I was like, I don't think I really like boys. So I remember in like 7th or 8th grade, I live in an apartment complex, and me and all my friends are sitting together, and we're being like deep, and like we're like, oh, let's tell our deep dark secrets. And I'm like, I'm bisexual, and they're like, okay, and I was like, no, like I'm bisexual. Did y'all hear it? And like nobody cared. So I was like, okay, it's like a cool thing. But then in high school, I started to internalize the stigmas and like heterosexism and things, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hell, like this is wrong.
Really?
Yeah, like it was like, cause that's what I started hearing at church, like in my family and things. So like I had a girlfriend, but like I would always tell my family, this is just my best friend,
right?
Whatever. Like the gays know. Like, so that was like, okay. When I get to college, I'm going to be straight because this is wrong. And like I got to college and became even more gay. And like it was like I stopped forcing myself to try to identify something that I'm not.
Right.
I became to identify as pansexual because I learned that more genders existed. So in high school and things, I only knew of men and women. I didn't learn of genderqueer people, non-binary people, gender fluid people, and other people that may fall under the trans umbrella or non-binary umbrella.
Okay.
So once I learned that, I was like, okay, cool. Like I don't think I would not date someone because of their gender.
Right.
And then I learned the term pansexual existed, and I was like,
that's me.
Yeah, that clicked.
Yeah. So I know you talked about being religious and growing up in a religious home with a religious background. Does your identity make it hard for you to be religious, would you say? It's
funny you ask that because I was just talking about religion and spirituality with my friends literally yesterday. It doesn't make it hard. It's just I have a different lens on religion, so I don't use it to oppress. I think about like the stories of like Sodom and Gomorrah differently and things because people are like, oh well, Sodom and Gomorrah is like a clear sign of like homosexuality is a sin, and I'm like, but also in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, homeboy was gonna sell his virgin daughter,
Right.
and then like they were all being rude to a foreigner. So I think that was like the bigger issue because why are you selling your child,
Right.
like versus me minding my business and dating who I'm dating.
Right.
I think people use religion as an oppressive tool, as a terrorist tool in many places, especially within our own country. So of course, like I don't identify with those parts of religion, which makes it hard because I'm like, well, can I call myself religious if I'm only picking the pieces that I want?
Yeah. And I have the same. I feel like I have the same, not for the same reason, but just I guess for the same reason. Actually, yeah, because I feel like a lot of the time people use it to oppress people.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And so I don't identify myself as like a Christian, but I do have like some like Christian beliefs. But it's like sprinkled in.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine. Like that's how it is. It's like sprinkled in. So lately I've been like, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Because I think like religion itself, like when you hear the word, I just like it feels
bad, like
cringy, because
right?
I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be one of those Christians,
people
like
you don't want,
Westboro and stuff like that. I'm like, that's not like. Unfortunately, my grandmother is one of those Christians.
Really?
Like, I've had so many trying conversations with her about gender and sexuality, and I'm like, girl, we can't. I love you dearly,
but
we can't have these conversations.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's just lately I've been like, I'm spiritual. So like, I pray and like, I'm constantly like giving thanks and things because I definitely believe in something higher than myself.
Right.
And battling with depression and other mental instability, sometimes that's like the only thing that'll get me out of like those bad spots. And I'm like, it ain't me pulling me out, so somebody gotta be, because otherwise I'm gonna be gone, So I definitely think I'm spiritual, and it does get hard because some days I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're just gonna burn the gays, like, I don't, like it gets really like tricky and trying. But I just like to believe that however God exists for me, I'm going to believe that his love for me is going to outweigh the earthly perceptions about my gender and sexuality, because I know I'm still a good person.
Right.
I'm not like out here like doing something morally wrong. So I don't think that me being trans and queer, me being queer, or being an advocate for trans people is going to like trump my goodness or like my love and like my faith.
Right. So earlier you mentioned that at one point you thought that you were bisexual, and then you started to identify as pansexual. Can you just clear up the notion that somebody being made, and you also said, sorry, because it makes no sense if I say this before I say something else. You mentioned that you're mostly attracted to women, right? You think women are better than men, which I agree. So can you just clear up this notion that being attracted to, for example, for you, being more attracted to women than men, that doesn't take away your identity? Because I feel like a lot of times people think, oh, she's more attracted to women than she is to men, so she's a lesbian and she's not bisexual. Yeah. Can you just clear that up?
Yeah. I'm laughing because the running joke with my friends is that I'm an aspiring lesbian. But I don't identify as a lesbian because I'm not.
Right.
I still am attracted to men, and I also am attracted to people that don't identify as women or men. This is something that I've also been going through with myself, because I'm like, I'm not that attracted to men. Like, what am I doing? Am I trying to cling on to something that I'm not? And in reality, it's just that all these things are on a spectrum, and it's not like it's like 50-50, or in my case, like 33% men, 33% women, and 33% genderqueer, gender fluid, non-binary, and so forth. That wouldn't make sense. I don't think anyone is like that. I also don't believe anyone is like 100% straight.
Wow,
so it's like,
my next question.
Yeah, so it's like, how are you gonna? You're not 100% straight, so why are you expecting me to like, have these fractions of how much my attraction is to someone? Because part of it too is like the personal is political. So being a social justice advocate, that constantly plays how I view people, how I interact with people, and my comfort level with people. And my comfortability, like in terms of like being emotionally vulnerable or anything, is not there in spaces with men that it is with women and non-binary, genderqueer people, and so forth. So it's like I don't feel that pull. Some people do, some people don't. There are bi people that are more attracted to men than women, and so forth. So it's like it's there's no like measuring cup for this thing. It's all how we personally feel about ourselves, and it's not really. It's hard to answer because like these things are gonna change in 10 years. Who knows? Like plot twist, I'm married to a man. I might be a little shocked, but like it's possible. You know, these things happen. It's like really frustrating because people are like, well, you know, isn't that wrong? Like you're not following the rules. Like gatekeeping inside and outside of the community. And I'm like, mind your business. Like, if I want you to know who I'm into, you're gonna know. And if I don't want you to know, you won't. Mind your business, keep it pushing.
Yeah, yeah. So why do you think that nobody is 100% straight?
Because I think that my understandings of gender and sexuality encompass the idea that part of it is a social construct.
Okay.
And if all you are taught is that taught and given space to believe is that it's heteronormativity. So like as a young girl, it's like I never had the exposure to queer relationships or like was willing to teach myself about those things, I would probably strongly believe that I'm only interested in men or like want to be with men and things. So like if you don't question yourself, explore that possibility, how do you know it's not there?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that like, you know, being straight doesn't exist. It's just that is anyone really 100% straight? Because like how do you know? If you've never opened yourself to the possibility, and maybe you have and you still are straight, and like that's okay. And like I'm not saying that sexual acts define orientation because they don't. Because there are straight people that will engage in same gender sex. Too. Yeah. So and there's also lesbians that will occasionally have sex with men, or maybe once like doing an experiment, or they just occasionally get into whatever. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think the issue is that people don't know how to mind their business, and everybody's always looking to label people, you know. And I had a conversation when Dwight Howard, and he was messing with the transsexual woman.
Yeah. Trans woman.
Yeah, and so I had like a huge, I guess, argument with somebody about that on social media because they were like, oh well, he's definitely gay, and I said, well, no, he's not.
Yeah.
And I mean, if he didn't say that he is. And my issue, I think, is that, like I said, people just try to label people, like, way too often instead of just letting people define themselves. And my thing is, like, how are you going to tell him that he's something if he says he's not?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think we've had this conversation before. The problem comes in with people not accepting that trans women are women and trans men are men. And also transgender, not transsexual.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. We're all learning. It's okay. But people don't accept that. So biological sex, chromosomes, and things like that do not always align with gender. So sex and gender are not interchangeable. So the problem comes in when we have trans women that are with straight men, and people want to call that man gay. First of all, if that's not how you identify, you're out of place. But also, you're automatically putting misgendering a trans woman, and that's not your place. That's unfair. That's dehumanizing, and it's severely inappropriate. Because for a lot of people, from my understanding, they automatically think about people's genitals and then place that to like mean what their gender is, and that's just not how things work. And we know that. And we also know that by pushing that agenda is just another form of colonization, because before European colonization of the world, we knew other genders and sexualities existed, but white people did what white people do, and they stole land, and they committed genocide, and they erased the knowledge. So now everybody's like, oh, well, trans women don't exist, trans men don't exist, and they do.
Right.
So if a straight man is dating a trans woman, he is still straight because a trans woman is a woman. There's no questions about it. A trans man is a man. There's no questions about it unless they tell you they identify another way.
Right. Okay, so my next question to you is, what's something that you wish people knew about the LGBTQ community that they do not know?
What do I wish people knew? Oh my goodness. I wish people knew that we are leaders, radical, revolutionary leaders. There's two things. That's the first one, and I think that's important to me because a lot of revolutionary, radical movements, especially for Black and brown communities, would not have existed without trans and queer people of color, like Marsha P. Sylvia Rivera, James Baldwin, Bayard Rustin, Audre Lorde, and like the list goes on. And people don't think about how influential we are. Like the Black Lives Matter movement started by three Black queer women, and people like to forget that. And then I've also seen people use the Black Lives Matter hashtag while being heterosexist, and I'm like, you don't even know the half of it. So I just wish people knew that instead of shaming us, shunning us, and trying to like push an agenda of us being weak or disgusting or vile or anything that people like to say about us, you should actually thank us because we're on the front lines more often than you are.
Right.
The second thing is that we are a severely oppressed group. Some of the most violent, horrendous attacks happen against us. Jussie Smollett just recently.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that later.
Yeah, the attack on Jussie Smollett, it was not a separation between his blackness and his queerness. Both of those things were attacked at the same time. Black trans women are killed at the highest rates in America. In the world,
right?
And their life expectancy is 35 years old. And that's heartbreaking. And we know that it's not due to like just natural causes. People are literally going out, attacking,
going out of their way,
assaulting, and murdering our community, and it's really deafening. And when, you know, we are walking around and like, you know, we're angry or we're upset or we're frustrated and we're like talking about these things, instead of being mad that we're mad, understand that we're mad because we are constantly attacked internally, because there's internalizations of hetero and cis sexism in the community and outside of the community, racism and queerness, racism and being trans, like all of those things are happening at one time. So we have every right to be mad. So if you ask me a question one day and I start yelling at you, I have a right. Because you don't know how many things happen before you ask that question. How many things happened in my life, a story I just heard from a friend or anything, and like people have to acknowledge that oppression as a very real thing. And it's not an oppression wars. It's not like, oh well, your issues with racism don't count because you're only black. It's like, I understand you deal with racism, but for me personally, I'm dealing with racism, sexism, and heterosexism all at the same time. We're battling different issues, and if we're going to talk about problems, let's talk about them adequately or not at all, because then you're just going to piss me off, and then I'm going to be the one that's wrong. So.
So do you think it's ever possible to separate different parts of your identity?
No.
And why is that?
I say no because, like I just said, like there's no separating them. They're always existing. Whether someone knows consciously or unconsciously that they're all like taking place at once, they are. So like every day I wake up, I say this, like because I'm a paraeducator, so like when we're doing our trainings and things, I give the example. Every day I wake up, I am black, I am queer, I am a woman. So if I encounter police and something bad happens, that was attack on my blackness, that was attack on me being a woman. Whatever goes on from there, may very well be an attack on my queerness. Fortunately, I do not always like look queer, so like, you know, I'm not openly like gay AF on my forehead. Ideal, but I'm not. So like, it's easy to be like, yeah, that's not really an issue, but that's how it feels. Or like, you know, just acknowledging that maybe they got that information someplace else, or just the acknowledgement that it's all existing at the same time. It's like for straight cis people, like if you have a black man, you being a man is never going to be separated from you being black. And you'll hear that because, like, say you're in a class, if they start talking about personal experience, they're going to start with as a black man.
As a black man.
But you know, if I come off as a black queer woman, oh, why do you have to bring that into it? Because it's always there. Like anything that happens to me, I think about it from all of the perspectives of my blackness, my queerness, and my womanness, and how they are individually being impacted or attacked, how they are collectively being impacted and attacked, and how I can move on with all of these identities existing at the same time.
So do you think people in the LGBTQ community are forced to think about the identity more often than people who identify as cis?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think sometimes it's more of the little things that straight cis people don't think about than the larger things. So it's not always just like marriage equality and adoption. Sometimes it's like, what bathroom can I go into? That person used the wrong pronouns. Or am I going to be judged for shopping in this section? I like this color. Am I allowed? Can I hold hands with this person without being perceived a certain way? Like for me, a couple of my family members that I'm out to, they'll automatically assume that if I'm watching something, I'm watching it because there's like women in it. Like, you know, in reality TV, like Black Ink Crew was on. Sometimes they're like in bikinis or whatever, and like my aunt assumed that I was interested because they were in bikinis,
Right.
and I'm like, not.
Maybe I just like the show.
But yeah, I just like drama because
Yeah.
I have a basic life and I
Yeah.
need something thrilling.
Right.
Like, but those kinds of things. So like, am I being watched because of something I'm watching, or maybe I'm holding hands with my friend and everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're two lesbians or something. Like, it's all of those like little things, and it's constantly being thought about. Like, if a conversation about gender and sexuality comes up in class, I'm like, a lot of times I'm like, do I come out in this moment? Do I sit back and like just let the conversation take its course? Or if I stand up and defend something, am I suddenly being labeled? Versus like, for straight cis people, those things don't happen because your identities are normalized. Not to say you don't think about them at all, but
not as much.
Yeah, like the dangers and things that may be there aren't as present. So like, you know, if a man and a woman are holding hands together, they're not going to think about what that's going to imply.
Right.
If a cis person is going into the bathroom, they're not going to think about, you know, somebody watching them go into that bathroom. They're not going to be worried about being attacked in that bathroom, necessarily speaking. Just little things like that. And then on a larger scale, it is also marriage, because just because it's legal doesn't mean people aren't like trying to stop it.
Yeah.
Or adoption. There are a lot of people that are being denied adoption because they are trans or queer. Housing, the prison industrial complex, welfare, the ban on the military right now, the trans folks ban on the military, which is like really disgusting. But like, it's like, if you're not forced to think about the fact that you are different, you won't.
Right.
So of course, like, we think about our race, because it's very clear
Very
in our world that there's some issues with our race versus someone that's white. But with these things that sometimes you can't always see, you can't always tell that someone's trans or queer.
Right.
Well, you shouldn't be able to. It's nobody's business if someone looks trans or not, because that's unfair to put those standards on them. But like, you know, even though you can't see it, the person can feel it. So that automatically puts a different lens on the world.
Yeah, yeah. And so earlier you said that you, every morning you wake up and you say, I'm a black queer woman, correct? Did I get the...
Yeah.
So, how do you decide which comes first?
I don't know. That isn't like a mantra. Like, I have every morning or things. It's just like, you know, I know they're always there. But I think my blackness, like, if I were putting them in order for me, I think it would be black, then woman, then queer, because for me, you automatically see my blackness. I think I look traditionally womanly, like, pretty sure I do. Growing up with catcalls, wow. And then like queerness, because like you can't always see it in me. I'm clearly broadcasting to all of your like millions of followers, so like I'm gay, but like other than that, like I'm not always wearing a bow tie. Like, you know, so it's like, I think that those being black, my blackness and my womanness are the first two that have that may feel an attack, because like, or just be encountered in general, because those things are obvious. But like, on my more personal level, for me, like in terms of myself, my queerness is my favorite identity.
Okay.
Because it's taken so long for me to be comfortable with it, and it makes me feel empowered, and like it molds like how I see people and how I love, and that's like with any relationship, friends, family, romantic, whatever. Like, it makes me feel rebellious and like revolutionary and like exciting. And then my blackness, because like it's like when I think of like being black, I'm light filled, I am magical, like I am a part of the world in a greater way than anyone can ever colonize or erase or dictate. And like, I feel like that way about my womanness too. It's just, I don't, as a cis woman, I'm fortunate that like my gender isn't something that I have to police in the way that trans people do. I don't have to necessarily perform it, or like broadcast it in ways that others may feel like they may have to. And like my womanness is like fluid for me sometimes. So sometimes I'm more masculine, sometimes I'm more feminine, but sometimes I'm just like, I'm just here. Yeah. I'm black and I'm gay, you know, like, so yeah, I think that's how it's right.
So what's the hardest part about being you?
Wow. The hardest part about being me, constantly, like praising myself, like, cause I'm constantly like, oh my gosh, girl, you look so good. Like, so like I love affirming myself. Like, people compliment me and I'm like, you're right, thanks. Like, that's like the thing with like amongst me and my friends. Like, I'm just very like sassy and loving about myself while simultaneously competing with my yesterday self.
Okay.
And I don't mean that in that cliche philosophical way that people often say that, but like really like just trying to constantly like believe that I am a good person. Like, I know I'm a good person, but like I struggle with depression. So like a lot of times, like, that's the hard part about it. Like, I'll feel good, like I'm like, yeah girl, you look good. Like, I've like cried in the mirror, stopped just to see how good I look, be like, yeah girl, you beautiful, and then finish crying. Like, it's so weird, but like that's the hardest thing. Yeah, it's like that's the hardest thing, like feeling affirmation within myself, but also dealing with the struggles of depression and like the second guessing of myself, or like the self-loathing, or just the internal struggles of like unveiling childhood traumas, or like struggles and things, because sometimes it's like it all comes crashing down.
Right.
Or then like I think this is it, one of the hardest things for me is with depression being a mood disorder, and may potentially be having an undiagnosed mood disorder, I can sit with friends and within seconds, like, I will be angry, and they like, it sucks because I don't want to be shitty to I don't want to be shitty to my friends, but like I can't control it, and sometimes it's really hard to explain that. Like, so it's a lot of times of going back, like, shit, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean that, but I was just like, it's so mad for nothing out of nowhere, and like it's hard for me to get out of that place. Like, really hard. Like, I have to like completely separate myself. Sometimes I need to like throw something just to like get myself to like come back to. It's really hard for me to come back and focus on the now, while simultaneously trying to be affirmative and like enjoy life and like believe that I am good and compliment myself all the time.
So I have a friend, she identifies as a lesbian, and so does her mom. And she shared with me that it was even hard for her to come out, knowing that her mom would have been okay with it. Did you share that same experience?
Kind of, yeah. So I think part of the problem was that people don't accept middle sexualities. It's like you need to be either or.
Yeah, right.
So for me, like, as a girl, it's like either you straight or you're lesbian, and I knew that wasn't it. So I didn't tell my mom. Like, to this day, I still won't like actually admit that best friend I had in high school was my girlfriend, even though my mom knows.
She knows, yeah.
Yeah. But I was just like, whatever. Like, that was my friend.
Yeah.
So it was hard because I knew a middle sexuality wouldn't be accepted, and I didn't know just what would be said. And I also know my mom was one of those moms. She'll go and tell her family. And I just didn't want my whole family to
be
know.
like in your business.
Yeah, because I just didn't know how to handle it. And like, my family also believes that my identity is because of my mom's identity. And I'm like, that's not how it works, because if that's the case, straight parents wouldn't have queer children, and cis parents wouldn't have trans children.
And like, that's always what I say when people are like, oh, like putting, for example, if there's two girls kissing in a cartoon, and they're like, oh my god, because they were kissing and my kids see them, now they're not gonna. And I'm just like, but like, wouldn't the reverse be the same?
Yeah.
Wouldn't everybody be, you know?
Usually it's more so the case of like, if you see that, it's like, you don't turn gay. It's more of an affirmation that you probably are. Like, it's sort of like, oh, I wasn't thinking about it, and now it's like, yeah, I'm into that. Like, that's usually how it goes. Or you find out if you're, gonna push normatives or you're gonna be accepting to them.
Right.
I actually just did a paper about that. But yes, it's tricky just because like you never, just because someone may be accepting to one person doesn't mean they're gonna be accepting to everybody else. Or like just people don't always have an understanding of middle sexualities.
Yeah.
And I was young, and so it was just like, who knew where I was gonna go?
Right.
And I still am selective about who knows in my family. My nana does not know. Like I will not ever tell her.
I guess we have to hide this video.
Yeah. No, she doesn't even know how to work her phone.
Okay.
She'll never find this video, probably. And if she does, I'm like, oh, cat's out the bag. But yeah, so coming out is always weird because you just have, it's like you like brace, you do it and then you're like, you wait and like see what happens. And like some people like find out different times because I came out on Facebook.
Oh,
So people saw it at different times. So it was like, oh, this is a little frisky, But it ended up being okay. But coming out is also something that continuously happens. So like, coming out to you was like different than coming out to everyone else because I came out to you at a different time. Your viewers, when they see this, coming out to them, like all of those things. So
and
it's
you never
like,
think about it like that.
yeah, it's like, I mean, I don't know if I know your viewers, so like it's not gonna be a big deal. But like, it happens on so many different levels. Because who knows, maybe I'll meet somebody walking down the street and we start having a conversation or something, and then I come out then. So it's like something that constantly happens.
And that's what I mean. Like I never really like even thought about that.
Yeah. Yes. Like so, usually when people are like you ask like how's it coming out, they always mean that first time. They don't mean like the most recent, which makes sense. Because if you don't know, you don't know. But usually the first time is like the biggest one, because that's like where you finally like stepped over the barrier to like really
down that wall.
be open about it. So for me, coming out every other time other than that it isn't as nerve-wracking because at this point I'm very unapologetic and solid in my identity. So it's like you're gonna react how you're gonna react, and if I gotta hand you a one, I'm gonna have to hand you a one. If I have to hug you because you're accepting, then I'll hug you.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question, you brought up Jussie Smollett. Is that how I say his last name? I can't get it right. I either say Smollett or Smollett. I don't know. But so basically, we all know what happened. He was attacked earlier this week, and they're saying it was by people wearing MAGA hats, and eye roll, because of his identity. I already know the answer to this question, but I'm just gonna ask you anyway. Are you surprised that something like this happened in 2018? 2020, wow. 2019, the year has changed.
No, not at all. It's like disappointed, sad, but not shocked. Because I don't know. I'm just not shocked. Like, I mean, sometimes like we have conversations about class protecting you from some things, but class doesn't protect you from everything, especially when you're a person of color, especially when you're trans and queer. So it's like, damn, another one got hurt. Fortunately, he's still with us.
I know.
But I'm not surprised, just largely because like a lot of us knew what was happening when Trump was running.
Right.
And people like to say, oh, like this is what he created, but these are things that already existed. All he did was like give people space to like be open about it. Like people are more willing to be true about the nasty kind of people they are. And a lot of different communities knew what was up before he got in.
Right.
Like the trans queer community, we already knew that he was gonna be trash. He had Mike Pence with him, and we already knew what he thought. So we already knew that this was like not for us.
Yeah.
Black people, we knew. Same woman, we knew because we whatever. We ain't gotta get into that. But like it's not surprising because we already know what like the safe spaces that the wrong kind of people have.
Right.
Like people that wear MAGA hats, they have unnecessary safe space. Nazis have an unnecessary safe space. Heterosexist and cissexist people have the wrong kind of safe space, partially because of who we have as our leader right now. And because of that safe space, people are taking that as an okay to push their negative, nasty agendas. And, I strongly believe that we're going to push back.
Yeah,
for sure.
I hope so.
Always.
So do you think that because now we're in a state where everybody's acting like they're so inclusive, do you think it's fake?
And
how long do you think it'll last?
I don't know, like, because I feel like people are inclusive insofar as it's comfortable for them.
Okay.
So when we start saying things like, okay, this trans person was attacked, we need funds, where's that inclusion?
Everybody's MIA.
Or, you know, someone was just wrongly arrested, we need to get them out, we need to get them safe. Where's the inclusion? The trans band of the military, where's the inclusion? You know,
Right.
so it's like, I just think that people like to be inclusive when it's convenient.
Okay.
So for some like leaders right now, especially like in the government and things, it's gonna sound good to be like, yeah, I support this person, but how far?
Right.
And like, if it wasn't that person, how far would you be going?
Yeah.
Because even though he was, he's a queer man, he's still a man.
Right.
So if this was a woman, how far would you be going?
Mhm.
If this was a disabled queer person, how far would you be going?
Yeah.
So it's like, inclusion makes me wary because I don't know the motives, I don't know how far people are going to take it, and I just don't know if it's real.
That's fair.
And too many times, unfortunately, in the Black community, it comes and it
It's only
goes.
to a certain extent.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
a good
like,
point. That's a great point. Well, thank you so much for being on my show.
yeah.
I was thinking about this when you were talking, and I was like, I'm gonna wait to the end to say it. But it's just been so great seeing you grow from like when I first saw you at that. I think it was at a program, and you were like a little like hi. I think you were like a sophomore, and just to see you just being so like bold and fierce, and just come on the show and just like bare your soul. I really think that's amazing, and I thank you for allowing me again to be a catalyst in a way. And like you said, like I said, you're always teaching me something, so I really do appreciate that. But before we go, is there anything else that you want to say? And do you have any resources that people can look to if they want to learn more about your community?
Yes. So actually, there's something I do want to say. I use the term heterosexist and cissexist a lot. Heterosexist is just a sexism that pushes the supremacy or the hierarchy of heterosexual people over queer people, and cissexism is a sexism that pushes the supremacy or the superiority of cisgender people over trans people, and it explains oppression in a way more than homophobia or transphobia may, because it's not a fair. These are things that are actually oppressive. So I do want to share that. Other than that, I just want to say, stay bold, stay brave. You know, identities are never negotiable, and there's a lot of oppressing and opposing forces, but the good ones always win. As far as resources, for anyone listening that's on Westchester's campus, on Thursday at 7:30 in the business building, I'll be hosting a panel and educational lecture about the intersections of race, gender, and sexuality, if you can get there. Other than that, Everyday Feminism is a good blog to follow. They post articles about feminism, sometimes about the trans queer community or intersectional feminism in general. The HRC is okay, slightly problematic because of how it's run and who it's run by, but it can be an educational resource. The Mazzoni Center in Philadelphia, just to name a few, and also just credible sources online, like just read it, and if it sounds a little funny, maybe not, but if they have sources to back them up, if you've heard them cited by other people, they're usually a good place to go to as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This was so great. And thank you guys for watching. We will be back next week to talk about Black history and what it means to me and my guests. Again, thank you guys so much for watching the Weekly Read, and we will be back next week.